What if Dooku was elected as Chancellor during the Phantom Menace instead of Palpatine? That's our story for today. Hope you guys enjoy, and let's get right into it. Our story begins on Coruscant, not long after Chancellor Valorum has been effectively removed from his position as Chancellor of the Republic, and Senator Palpatine of Naboo is speaking to Queen Amidala of Naboo, telling her that he's been nominated for the position, along with Senators Ainley Team of Malastare and Bail Antilles of Alderaan. There are other candidates in the running, but those are the only three that expected polling shows have any real chance, and Palpatine knew that he and Plagueis have done more than enough to secure the vote of enough senators, so he would most certainly become the Chancellor. It was an excellent night, and it called for celebration, so Palpatine would spend the night with Plagueis, celebrating, and it would be the final night of Plagueis' life. But in the shadows that night, the mysterious fourth candidate who entered his name for the position of Chancellor prepared a speech to get the people on his side. For months, Count Dooku of Serenno has been preparing for this moment, ever since Palpatine laid out the grand plan of the Sith to him. Dooku left the Jedi because he believes they were complicit in serving a Senate that was corrupt beyond saving, and when the Sith approached Dooku about tearing down the Republic and restarting, Dooku was open to it. But Dooku meditated on this. He had visions of a future that he did not want. Planets being torn apart, citizens dying for nothing, trillions of them, a dictatorship rising and being even worse than the Republic. So, Dooku decided long ago to spoil the plans for the Sith, and he would expose who Palpatine truly is. When morning came, Palpatine, Team Antilles, and anyone else in the running were expected to deliver remarks to the Senate and to the galaxy via the Republic HoloNet. Palpatine's speech was far and away the best of them all, but as everyone thought the election to be basically wrapped up, the surprise candidate was announced: Count Dooku, former Jedi Master. The galaxy and the senators were shocked by this, but not nearly as shocked as Palpatine himself. By the time Palpatine saw what Dooku was doing, it was far too late to do anything, but he was also smart enough to know he should get off planet immediately and figure out exactly what is going on. But inside of the Jedi Temple, as Dooku began speaking, a beacon went off in the council chambers. Dooku left the Jedi a message detailing everything about Sidious, and also laying out 3 locations he may be at right now. And upon hearing this, the Jedi would split off into 3 squads of 10. Windu led one, Ki-Adi-Mundi led one, and Yoda led one as they all took off into the locations given by Dooku. In the Senate, Dooku would rise up in the main pod, and he began his speech. And it would go like this: People of the Republic, I have been called to serve you for many years. First, for many long years as a Jedi, rising all the way to the rank of Master, then to my home planet as Count of Serenno, and now I have once again felt the call to serve, but this time as Chancellor of the Republic. I love the Republic for what it represents, but I, like so many others, see that it has changed. It has worn down, and we as Jedi and politicians have allowed it to be worn down, whether it be for greed, money, or our own laziness in this time of peace. But in this time of peace, the people are suffering. As a Jedi, I saw things. Years ago, the people of the planet Terrasi captured Senator Dagonet's son. They were desperate, hungry, and abandoned by the Senate that swore to protect them. I saw firsthand exactly how far we have fallen. Dooku looked over to Senator Dagonet. He was much older now, though he had changed for the better, and his people were much better off. And Dooku continued, saying, In my years as a Jedi, I have traveled the galaxy and seen many different worlds in the Outer Rim, Mid-Rim, and Core, and I lost faith after seeing so many worlds suffer, with no way to make real change. So I went home, and I served as Count to my home planet, bringing swift peace to a long-lasting conflict, and Serenno is now one of the most prosperous worlds in our galaxy. Dooku looked around, seeing the senators were truly paying attention to him, and he continued saying, In my vulnerability, in my desperation for restoration of this once great republic, I was approached by a man who had a way to bring change, but it would have costed the lives of trillions through war and suffering, only to bring about an empire in his name. And Dooku played a message he secretly recorded, where Palpatine himself told Dooku that in time, the Republic and the Jedi will fall, and the Empire will rise under the Sith. The crowd gasped, yelling out in anger, and Dooku continued saying, I strive for a day when the people of the Republic feel safe, and in order to do this, we must eradicate corruption of Palpatine and the Sith. I promise, if you elect me as Chancellor, the Republic will prosper, this economy will grow, and sewer rats like Palpatine will not control us any longer. I vow to not only serve the Senate, but to serve the people of the Republic." The galaxy cheered, and Dooku descended back down into the lower levels of the Senate chambers, where Masameda was waiting. He told Dooku he's done well, and Dooku waved him off before flying to the Jedi Temple. Across Coruscant, the three Jedi teams were scrambling to intercept Sidious before he could disappear, and Windu's team, consisting of Plo Koon, Yaddle, Depa Billaba, and a group of Jedi Masters not on the Council, arrived at the industrial sector just as a ship was taking off. All 10 Jedi reached out with the Force, gripping the ship in the air, but they weren't going to be able to hold it for long. The ship was too far away. So Windu made a choice, twisting his wrists with the Force to crush the engines, and the ship erupted in a huge explosion, crashing hard down into the sector floor, where more explosions went off. The Sith Lord was gone, and the Jedi looked to each other, knowing that it had to be done. Across the galaxy, on Naboo, Darth Maul was dueling with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn on the bridges of the plasma refinery when he felt this shift in the Force. Something happened to his master. He was either greatly injured or maybe even dead, and this singular moment of hesitation allowed Qui-Gon to cut through the blade of Maul, and Obi-Wan sliced Maul across the chest, severing into his heart, and with a final gasp, Maul died before falling forever down the plasma refinery to never be seen again. Jinn and Kenobi won, and they would soon see young Skywalker save the people of Naboo by blowing up the droid control ship. As the Jedi rode back together, they would contact the Council and receive a recap of all of the shocking news, including something Qui-Gon never saw coming. The Senate just voted to elect Dooku as Chancellor of the Republic, as Palpatine was exposed to be a corrupt Sith Lord, and the other two candidates didn't show nearly as much strength and vulnerability as Dooku. The Republic wanted a strong leader, but also one that would continue to grow profits, and Dooku would be elected by a wide margin. And over the next few days, Dooku would accept his place in the office of the Chancellor, while Qui-Gon would convince the Jedi to let him train young Skywalker. Things were good, and there was much work to be done to reform a galaxy in need of strong leadership. And the galaxy would begin a new era. Under Dooku's chancellorship, the Republic would undergo significant transformations. Dooku, a former Jedi with a deep sense of justice and a strong belief in the Republic's potential, would use his position to tackle corruption head-on. Understanding that the corrupt corporations like the Trade Federation and the Techno Union are deeply entrenched in the Republic's political system, Dooku would decide to take a pragmatic approach. As one of his first moves in office, instead of confronting these entities directly, he would propose a radical shift in military policy, the creation of a galactic army composed of civilians. But each planet was encouraged to form its own army with funding from the Republic, thereby decentralizing military power and fostering a sense of local responsibility. The corporations, sensing an opportunity, would throw their support behind Dooku's proposal, eager to secure lucrative contracts for producing weapons and equipment. This approach allowed the corporations to grow their profits while aligning with Dooku's vision of a strengthened Republic. Dooku and the Jedi would get into extensive conversations and debates about the creation of a galactic army. But after the rise of the Sith in the shadows, crime was spiking, and this army created a sense of security, while also creating many jobs and strengthening the overall economy. The Jedi eventually accepted this, as it was a different army on each planet. It wasn't occupation from a Coruscant army, and each planet would slowly accept this proposal. Dooku's policies would have a profound impact on the Mid and Outer Rim territories, which were long neglected by the Republic. Unlike previous administrations that funneled tax revenue into the wealthy core systems, Dooku ensured that resources were distributed more equally. Infrastructure projects, educational initiatives, and healthcare reforms were prioritized in these regions, leading to a marked improvement in the quality of life for trillions. Planets that were once on the brink of collapse would begin to thrive, as Dooku's admin invested heavily into their development. The people's faith in the Republic was beginning to be restored, and Dooku's popularity soared as he was seen as a leader who truly cared about all citizens, not just the elites. This would not at all be easy, as many of the senators in these systems in the Mid and Outer Rims were extremely corrupt. They never visited their planets, they fought hard to shut down Dooku's initiatives that were taking money out of their pockets and giving it to their people. So, to further his anti-corruption agenda, Dooku implemented new electoral reforms as well. Corrupt senators were identified and removed from power through a series of new polling and elections, overseen by groups of senators that Dooku had deemed trustworthy, and the Jedi Order helped with this as well. The elections were transparent, and for the first time in many years, the citizens would feel that their voices were being heard. The Senate, once a building of corruption, wealth, and greed, would begin to transform into a body that genuinely represented the interests of the people. Profits would continue to make the senators wealthier, something that Dooku just had to accept, while also making each planet stronger and happier. The Jedi, who have long been confined to Coruscant and to being lapdogs of the Senate, were tasked with overseeing these reforms and ensuring their integrity. Dooku would also oversee the expansion of the Jedi Order's influence across the galaxy. Recognizing the importance of their presence in maintaining order, providing aid, he supported the construction and the restoration of Jedi outposts on planets in the Mid and Outer Rim. These outposts would serve as centers of peacekeeping, mediation, and humanitarian aid, helping to stabilize troubled regions and prevent conflicts in the planetary militaries that would often overstep their boundaries before they would escalate. The Jedi, spread across the galaxy, would become more connected to the everyday lives of the Republic citizens, reinforcing their role as protectors and peacekeepers. There was a lot of tension at times, as the local militias didn't love oversight from the Jedi, but more often than not, the conflicts would settle themselves as planets were thriving. After a few years of successful governance, Dooku would see the need to bring fresh perspectives into his administration. After long discussions and interviews with the youngest, most promising politicians in the entire galaxy, Dooku would appoint Padme Amidala, a young, idealistic senator from Naboo, to replace Mas Amedda as his vice-chancellor. Amidala, known for her compassion and dedication to her people, quickly became a symbol of the Republic's renewed commitment to democracy and justice, and in the eyes of the galaxy, it helped wipe the stain of Naboo being the home of Palpatine. Padme's influence, combined with Dooku's wisdom and experience, strengthened the Republic's leadership and helped unify the galaxy even more, as over the next decade, the galaxy truly did flourish under the leadership of Dooku and the Jedi Order. Corruption was significantly reduced, the Republic became more inclusive and fair, while profit steadily increased as well. The collaboration between the Jedi and the government brought about prosperity that was seen only during the High Republic. As peace and order were maintained across the galaxy, the Republic stood as a beacon of hope and justice, with Dooku's legacy as a wise leader firmly established in history. And the Republic would continue to expand, reaching planets that were hesitant to join for years, and many of these planets, including Tatooine, would accept Republic aid. Qui-Gon Jinn and his Padawan Anakin Skywalker were among the Jedi that were constantly on missions, providing aid, freeing people from worlds littered by crime and slavery. The two of them would make a point to free Shmi and Anakin's friends when Tatooine became part of the Republic, and this made Anakin proud to be a Jedi. The Republic and the Jedi were allowed to grow and prosper together because the influence of the Sith all but disappeared after that fateful election speech by Dooku. But the Sith were not dead. They were growing, festering in the far reaches of Exegol, a hidden Sith planet. Darth Sidious crashed hard into the ground in his exploded ship on Coruscant so long ago, and in that crash, his legs were mangled, his face torn apart, and he was nearly dead, but his anger kept him alive. He'd crawled into the horrible Coruscant sewers as the Republic tried to find his body, and for the last decade, Sidious had used his anger and hatred to fix himself and begin rebuilding. He abandoned his and Plagueis' plans for festering their power through political manipulation. Instead, he decided to take the galaxy by force, showing the people that the Sith will not be denied. So for the last decade, while the criminals of the galaxy were cast away by Dooku's reforms, they all needed somewhere to go. And Sidious deployed agents to show tens of thousands the way to Exegol. Over the last decade, a fleet of ships were built in the name of the Sith, in the name of chaos and anarchy. And in time, this fleet, under the name of the Sith Anarchy, would reveal itself to the unexpected galaxy. Sidious never took on a new apprentice. Maul died and Dooku betrayed him, so he would do this himself, learn to become the immortal Emperor, wiping out every other Force-sensitive being in the galaxy until his reign as Eternal Emperor was secured, and the galaxy was in the palm of his hand. This darkness festering in the hidden corner of the galaxy would continue to build, and the Jedi would feel it after this time. Chancellor Dooku would feel it as well, and he would begin deploying Jedi squads to known Sith worlds to try and find out if the darkness they were feeling was truly something to worry about. Mace Windu and Depa Billaba would travel to Moraband with a group of 10 knights and spend a week searching for anything, but coming up empty. The same would happen on Malachor, with Yaddle and Ki-Adi-Mundi leading a squad of knights for an exploration. The same would happen on planets Zeost, Jaguada, Asag, but nothing would come out of these explorations. There was one other planet though, and it was just one of legends. It was called Exegol, and it was thought to be hidden through the Red Honeycomb Zone. This was a web of hyperspace anomalies that basically prevented travel into the unknown regions. But as the feeling of darkness grew, Dooku personally spoke to a group of the best pilots in the Jedi Order, Plo Koon, Saesee Tiin, and Anakin Skywalker, and Dooku asked them to navigate this honeycomb zone. It was dangerous, and no one had ever done it before, but with their combined abilities and the Force as their ally, it was possible. And Anakin, now 20 years old and recently made a knight, would accept this role as he, Plo, and Saesee would speak to the Council about their decision. Among the Council members were Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, and they led the support for this mission, knowing that if anyone could fly the scouting mission, it was Skywalker. And so, the three Jedi would take off in a heavily armored Republic cruiser. The trip would be extremely rough, with the ship nearly being ripped apart multiple times, but after hours of focus and intense flying, the three Jedi would use their abilities to be the first people to ever navigate this route without using a Sith wayfinder. And what they would find would be worse than what they could have ever imagined. A fleet built up of hundreds of different vessels from around the galaxy, all preparing for a jump to hyperspace. And the fleet now stared at the Jedi cruiser. From the lead ship, a huge Venator that held Darth Sidious inside of it, Sidious demanded a tractor beam be activated. The Jedi ship was pulled into the reach of the Sith Venator as a tube was sent out from the Venator, connecting with the Jedi cruiser. Skywalker, Plo, and Saesee waited in fear as the ships connected, and a door opened, revealing two red blades. And with a laugh, Sidious said the time of the Sith anarchy is upon them. He spun at the Jedi, carving through Saesee Tiin, turning to Plo and Anakin. The two surviving Jedi managed to block initial strikes, but Sidious sent a wave of lightning at them as they slammed hard into the ship wall. Sidious yelled that the time of the Jedi is over, blasting lightning into the ship windows, destroying them as he moved back into his own ship, letting the Jedi die, sucked into space. And as Plo and Anakin were sucked into the void of space, the Sith Anarchy fleet took off into hyperspace, and Plo made a move immediately. As Anakin was calling upon the Force to keep his body from freezing up and imploding, Plo ripped off his mask, securing it to Anakin's face, and he used a huge Force push to send Anakin at the escape pod of their cruiser. As Plo died, the last thing he saw was Anakin crawling into the escape pod, alive, but knocked unconscious. Anakin was as powerful as anyone in the galaxy, and his powers allowed him to survive just long enough, thanks to Plo and his mask. Another second in space would have killed him, and when he finally woke up, he crawled back into the Jedi ship, hitting the emergency hatch to close the broken windows, and he moved to the communicator. Anakin tried to contact Coruscant, but it was too late. Communications were shut off. The Sith Anarchy made it there. The decade of prosperity and peace under Chancellor Dooku and the Jedi Order came to a sudden, brutal end with the arrival of the Sith Anarchy. Sidious built a vast fleet of criminals, outcasts, and Sith loyalists, shaping them into a powerful military force, and without warning, this fleet emerged from hyperspace over Coruscant, descending upon the capital of the Republic like a storm. The skies above the city planet darkened as thousands of ships, fighters, and dropships poured into the atmosphere, catching the Jedi and the Republic military completely off guard. Panic would quickly spread through the streets as citizens scrambled for safety, and the planetary defenses, unprepared for any assault of this magnitude, were immediately overwhelmed. The Jedi Temple, the symbol of peace and justice forever, became the first target of the Anarchy's wrath. In a coordinated assault, the Sith warriors and the mercenaries would breach the temple's defenses, shooting down any Jedi who attempted to defend their home. Masters and temple guards fought, while knights and Padawans evacuated with the younglings into the underworld. The halls of the temple echoed with the clash of battle and the cries of dying Jedi. The walls, training rooms, peaceful meditation areas, and chambers of peace crumbled under the relentless assault from this anarchy, and the temple itself would fall into ruins. As the last of the defenders were shot, the few surviving Jedi were forced into retreat into the shadows as their order felt shattered. The Jedi that were off-planet, including Windu, Yaddle, Balaba, Mundi, and the rest that were out exploring Sith worlds, were not here to defend the temple as it fell, and Grand Master Yoda would be among those who died protecting the temple. Simultaneously, the Senate building was surrounded by the forces of the Anarchy. The Republic's leaders, stunned by the suddenness of this attack and the ferocity of their enemies, had little choice but to surrender. The senators found themselves powerless as they were taken into custody to overrun Republic prisons. Chancellor Dooku stood alone in his office as Darth Sidious himself would enter. The Dark Lord was here for his revenge, and Dooku, though a powerful leader and former Jedi, was no match for Sidious. Dooku hadn't fought in a decade. He was quickly defeated and taken prisoner by Sidious, who now stood triumphant over the broken Republic. Coruscant, the heart of the galaxy, fell into the hands of darkness, and the era of peace that Dooku fought so hard to build was shattered in a single, devastating blow that took mere hours after a decade of planning. Sidious would declare martial law on the capital of the galaxy. No vessels would be allowed to leave or enter the system without being immediately destroyed. Some civilians would try, but they learned their lesson as they were quickly blown up. The planet was blockaded, and as Jedi vessels with Windu, Balaba, Mundi, and Skywalker returned, they were forced to leave right away or be destroyed. But although Sidious defeated the Jedi, senators, and Chancellor, he underestimated one thing: the people. As the chaos and the despair that was gripping Coruscant following the Sith Anarchy's brutal occupation and Dooku was being set for a public execution, a quiet but powerful resistance began to stir among the planet's people. It would start in the lower levels, where the people who once were left to die by the politicians were now uplifted by Dooku. They would feel the sharpest sting of the Sith tyranny, and as darkness fell over the city, a rhythmic sound would begin to echo through the streets and the alleys. Metal striking metal, objects being banged together in unison. At first, it was isolated, a few brave souls signaling to each other in defiance, but the sound would spread, growing louder and more widespread as it traveled upwards through the levels of Coruscant. The rhythmic clanging became a unified signal, a heartbeat of rebellion that moved through the city, igniting a spark of hope in the hearts of billions. The Sith Anarchy, though powerful and very united, was unprepared for the scale of resistance that would begin to unfold. The constant, unrelenting noise of the citizens' defiance would breed paranoia among the Anarchy. They could sense the tide turning, but couldn't pinpoint the source of this unease. The clanging became a rallying cry, and the citizens of Coruscant began to mobilize. Small acts of sabotage and defiance escalate into coordinated attacks. Armed with whatever weapons they could find or fashion, the people striking back against the Sith forces, targeting their supply lines, communications, and patrols. The military centers of Coruscant were freed first, allowing the army to run out and fight back. The resistance spreads like wildfire, and Sidious could feel it. He asked his men where these fighters were coming from, and with a pale, scared face, Sidious's men said these weren't fighters. They were just people. In the captured Jedi Temple, citizens swarmed the occupied halls, overpowering the Anarchy guards with sheer numbers. They liberated the few surviving Jedi who'd been imprisoned, reigniting a flame of hope among the defenders of peace as their lightsabers were reignited and the Jedi returned from the underlevels. The same scene was unfolding in the Senate building, where senators and their aides, previously held captive, were freed by the citizens who stormed the structure. Padme was leading the fight against these anarchists, and Dooku, still a prisoner, was overwhelmed by the outpouring of loyalty and courage from the people he's been leading. He could tell Sidious was planning something, and he knew it would kill so many more innocents, and Dooku realized what was happening. Sidious was about to call for a planetary bombardment to basically wipe out everyone that was uprising. So Dooku dove at Sidious, knocking one of his blades to the ground along with his communicator. Sidious ignited his other blade, slicing at Dooku, and Dooku managed to get his handcuffs in the blade's path, getting them cut off, and he dove for the other blade on the ground. Sidious shot lightning at Dooku, hitting him in the chest, but Dooku managed to turn, calling upon the Force to deflect it away. And Sidious stopped the lightning, swinging his blade at Dooku once more, but Dooku ducked, calling the other blade to his hands, picking it up and igniting it right through Sidious's chest, as Sidious did the same to Dooku. They both had a blade stab right through them, and Dooku told Sidious, "The Sith will always fail. The Republic will stand long after his death." And they died together on the steps of the Jedi Temple. As the uprising reached its climax, Billions of Coruscant inhabitants joined the battle. The streets became battlegrounds, and the death of Dooku was spread throughout the planet, and this only rallied more people. The sky was filled with the sounds of explosions, the clash of freedom fighting. The Sith anarchy, once so confident in their victory, were thrown into panic. The sheer number of people against them overwhelmed the occupiers. The carefully laid plans of the Sith would unravel as their forces were driven back, one stronghold after another falling to the relentless tide. The surviving Jedi joined the fight once more, taking to the air to take down the Sith fleet. The people of Coruscant, united in their fight for freedom, would reclaim their world, proving that the strength of the Republic lies not in its institutions, but in the spirit of its people. When it was all over, the planet was freed, and a grand funeral would be held for Dooku. A giant memorial would be built for all who died on that fateful day. New Chancellor Padme Amidala would lead the rebuilding of Coruscant with the people united under her leadership. The Jedi Order would live on, as Anakin would return to the temple with Windu and the others. Anakin would be heartbroken as he found Qui-Gon Jinn dead in the council chambers. He fell protecting a group of younglings as they escaped with Master Kenobi, who now put a hand on Anakin's shoulder, saying they will honor Jinn's memory, and he will always live on through them. Chancellor Amidala would bring the Jedi to her aid for Coruscant missions. Skywalker and Kenobi would lead these missions, as Grand Master Windu focused on making sure the Order was alright, and together, the Republic would prosper and move on, even after Dooku's death, as he set up the Republic and the Jedi Order to survive for as long as it possibly could. And folks, that is our story for today. Oh, I almost went 30 minutes. That's a long time. If you want to see a blooper to this video where something funny happened, stick around for right now. Lies. Small acts of sabotage and... Amber alert. I actually almost just had a heart attack. Oh my god. Woo! Heart beating out of my chest right now. Oh, where was I? All right. Anyways, I watched Andor like a few days ago, and I was like, dang, I really want to do something with a little rebellion, but like make it maybe on Coruscant. So I did that. Yeah, that was fun to write. Went a lot longer. I mean, I was gonna upload it yesterday. To not today when you could be watching this in 6 months, but I meant who cares? Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed.